Oh, good morning and thank you for joining us for today's edition of Sports Check with me, Richard Munga. As of course we bring you different sports conversations as well as have a review of what happened over the weekend, but we'll be doing that later on. A lot in store for you, of course, and you can always remember to give us your feedback on the show or any questions, of course, you can pose to our guest in the studio via our social media platforms on Facebook at KBC Channel 1, and same goes for Twitter at KBC Channel 1. You can also tweet me directly at Munga_Mbatia. Now, let's get right into it, whereby in our first segment, we're going to be talking about, well, the Kenya Cup. As we all know, last week we had KRU release the fixtures for this season, which kicks off in February. Actually, early February, we'll have the qualifiers, and then we get to know the two teams that will be promoted to the season, to the 2021 Kenya Cup season. And in studio, of course, to talk about that is Michael Kwambo, not a new face for most viewers. Kwambo, thank you very much for joining us right here on Sports Check on KBC Channel 1.
Thank you.
So maybe for people like you, for rugby analysts, for rugby enthusiasts, what does this mean for you? Finally, we can at least have rugby finally after almost a year out because of COVID-19 and all.
Yeah, well, on that breath, it's good. People had literally become frustrated. You have become so used to doing something week in, week out, whether you're playing, following the game, or doing things related to the game. So you can imagine 11 months without rugby, and then the information comes. It's obviously good news. We have to get used to playing without fans for the time being, but a step at a time. So the game is back. We're happy about that. Let's just build from there.
Okay. Yeah. And since you've mentioned something interesting, 11 months without rugby action, and you see the differences between, like here at the moment, we've been having the teams only resume training. Some of them actually, we are yet to receive that confirmation whether other teams are back in training. At the moment, I only know like 3, 4, machine being one of them. But then again, what level, what competition should we expect? Given of course the fact that they've not even been training for the longest time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite challenging, given the fact that conditioning levels will not be optimum. But in terms of competition, still expect the teams to put their best foot forward, because even though guys have not been training in rugby-specific regimes, they have been keeping fit, keeping busy. I know a number of people who are engaging in individual sports like running, cycling. So the whole thing is that they were there. But now for them to adapt to the rugby brain, to the rugby mind again, is going to be a bit of a challenge. But still, I think we will adapt and just get back to playing.
Okay. Now, as I did mention about the qualifiers for the Kenya Cup, of course, they're happening on Saturday, that is February 6th, early next month. And we have a situation here whereby schools have just resumed. And then again, you have institutions which actually participate, be it in the championship or the Kenya Cup, which mostly we have the likes of Main Machine, Egerton, Wasp, USAU, and those are actually teams that will be participating in the qualifiers. Do you think they can actually, let's say, give it their best, or do you think that those matches will be maybe competitive enough to actually prepare them for next season?
Yeah, they will be competitive because everybody is looking to qualify for the Kenya Cup. So it's about you putting your best foot forward. And like I told you earlier, people have been training, they've been getting ready to come back to the game. They should be quite exciting matches, especially when you not even mention a team like Machine or Egerton, but there's a team called Northern Suburbs.
Of course.
Northern Suburbs is one team full of young players. This is their first season in the championship, and now they are within touching distance of the Kenya Cup. I don't know if they have the capacity to make it through to the Kenya Cup, but for them, that progress within one season is quite a lot. And that just is Northern Suburbs. Now let's go to the rest, the likes of Mean Machine, who were in the Kenya Cup for 40 years, then have been unfortunate to be relegated in the past season. I think for them as well, the hunger to go back to the top league and perform a lot better will be there. We have Must, Masinde Muliro University, from the current home of Kenyan rugby, which is Kakamega.
True.
Yeah. The fact that they want to qualify as well, becoming the third team from Kakamega to qualify for the Kenya Cup.
Quite impressive.
They are there. Strathmore Leos as well. All these teams have been putting in a lot of hard work behind the scenes. And then maybe just to inform you, the Kenya Rugby Union did due diligence way before the clearance and way before the announcement was done. So this involved a lot of site visits, a lot of checks to ensure that compliance to the regulations, both from the Ministry of Health, World Health Organization and World Rugby, are complied with. We do have a set of requirements which we will be sharing with the public shortly, but it just shows you the work that has been going on behind the scenes. But to answer your question, they should be competitive matches.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned something interesting, of course, the COVID protocols, you know, ahead of the new season. We shall be talking about that later on. Yeah. But allow me to go back to something you did mention about the likes of Main Machine. It has been there in the league for the longest time, but then again, it got relegated to the championship. It's, you know, attempting to make a comeback. It's not the only institutional school team, of course, that has been in the league before, but then again, didn't quite go well for, it doesn't quite go well for most of them, which obviously boils down to the fact that you have these players who used to support this team, but then again, once they're done with their studies, obviously they will be recruited by another team since they're no longer students. But is there, let's say, not really a regulation, but an allowance that can at least maintain the competitiveness of these institutional teams? Maybe can we have, you know, people actually playing for, you know, of course, that is up to those are regulations put forth by KRE and all that. But if we are to maintain competitiveness between institutional teams, school teams, that we don't, you know, witness the same thing happening over and over again. They come back for one season, then they're gone. Is there any allowance, really, allowance for lack of a better word, that we can have, you know, those students playing professionally? Well,
I think it's an open environment, so there wouldn't be any allowance, because to say that would also now probably mean that, you know, a team like KCB ensures that all its players are employees of the bank, or Cabras Sugar, or any other team supported by another institution. I think what should happen is the institutions that are associated with these teams should pump in a lot more in terms of resources. When I talk about resources, it's not only money, but that support as well. In 2012, Strathmore was qualified for the Kenya Cup final. And the secret behind that was a team that they built. They offered players scholarships and, you know, the little things to encourage them. And these players returned that. I look at Mean Machine and I look at where the rain started beating them. For the longest time, they got the most talented players. But when other teams started coming up, when the game started becoming professional around the world, and in Kenya, some money started flowing as well, it was rather obvious that you go to a place that is giving you allowances. When I look at the universities, for example, putting these players on scholarships would work wonders. You know, you'd be able to retain your players, you'd be able to have that conveyor belt. Most importantly, you'd be able to stay competitive, even competing with the likes of, the likes of the big wigs at the moment, the KCBs and Cabrases of this world. Look at what teams like Impala and Queens have done. They have been able to, it's quite ironic, pay fees for some of their players in these same institutions where the players are learning from. So if the university administrations across the board would realize the importance of sports, because for me, I'm looking at these guys as not only competitors on the field of play, but they are your ambassadors. These are people that you can say, this is the home of, say, for example, Richard Munga, our star Kenya international who also plays for us, right? And I think the onus is upon the universities and the related institutions to do that. Just provide environments where their players are comfortable and and they're able to perform. I mean, UN, for example, has so much space in terms of playing fields.
That is true.
Yeah.
Of course, some of it has been, you know,
but let's not.
Yeah, but it has so much. There's so much that you could do there. Build a high-performance facility. But again, the onus is on them.
But then that comes down to investment, of course. And maybe the last time sorry to digress, but since we mentioned, you know, you did mention a high performance, you know, maybe facility, gym, whichever. But the last time we were talking, we discussed something about not only depending on, let's say, the government for investment. But then again, what other alternatives do these schools have, or even these clubs, not even schools alone, even the clubs, for example, because as you did mention, UN have a huge space. But why is it that, you know, they themselves, they cannot, you know, at least get the opportunity? Is it the investment bit? Is it intention bit? Maybe, you know, those in charge, you know, maybe they're not willing. Is that it, or it's just lack of investment?
I don't think it's a lack of investment. I think it's a lack of foresight, and that means that those in charge are probably not willing, probably by intent or by design. Yeah. So somebody needs to evangelize to them that, hey, you can do so much from this, and it can benefit not only the university but the students as well. And that would be another revenue generating activity coming to the clubs as well, until we get to a moment where, fine, we are paying our players, but are we paying the backroom staff as well to get the work done? What I'm trying to say is that if we're now able to run our clubs like businesses properly, we don't have to be giant organizations like what do you call it, the big sporting entities of the world, but just running it like a business and knowing that we've got people on the admin side, we've got people on the coaching side, and on the playing unit, everything is working out together. So I think that's what we need to do, just change our whole outlook in sports management. Yeah.
And of course, then again, in sports management, allow me to delve into another issue, because let me ask you, how many centers or how many pitches can we talk of that, you know, are actually suitable to host rugby matches in Kenya?
Yeah, we'd have to look. We'd have to look. Yeah, there are probably a handful.
A handful.
Yes.
Exactly, because my next point is, most of the time that the matches are not in Nairobi, we have matches in Kakamega, which, well, that we have to because of, you know, the likes of Cabras and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then again, if that's the case, does that mean that forever we'll just be used to, you know, having, you know, the rugby fan base here in Nairobi and in Kakamega?
Remember, we just talked about it, investing. So once we're able to invest, we're able to spread our wings out and have the game elsewhere, and also attract more people to come and play. So it's all about investment. It has to be deliberate, both at all levels, from the union, from the clubs, from the community as well.
Okay. Yeah. But when it comes to investment, once again, not only relying on the government, how do you think these clubs can actually, you know, let's say fundraise for such money? For the coming season, at least KRU has a broadcast deal with one of the local media stations, which is a good step. But then again, that only cannot sustain the investment needed to obviously sustain all these teams. Maybe what are the alternatives that we can, you know, explore? Yeah,
like I said, you know, things like merchandising, you know, intellectual property. But I'm sure that's a discussion that we could have off of this. But those are just some of the things that we could explore, because, I mean, everybody wants to associate with their brand, and I'm beginning to see it a lot more. I've been looking at rugby's cousin, football, of late, and on the local scene, they're doing a good job in terms of that visibility. And what's happening now, there's that association that is coming. You want to associate with a team, with a brand, and it's happening. So, I mean, if we can do the same, and if we can be able to channel those resources, no matter how small they are, back into the organization, I think that is a step towards growing into self-sustaining entities, both on and off the pitch.
Okay, Kwambo, for you, you're a communications specialist. So let me ask you this question. Do you think it's a possibility for most of these clubs to enhance their visibility, especially nowadays most things really are online, digital and whatnot? And you have a situation whereby, let's have a look at, you can look at the National League in somewhere like England or somewhere, the rugby one, that is, whereby these guys actually have, you know, their own media teams. And even if it's not, you know, so, you know, sophisticated and whatnot, at least the least they can have is, let's say, a YouTube channel. Do you think we are at a place whereby we can actually encourage most Kenyan clubs, not only rugby, in all disciplines, to do that? Because some of them are doing that. The one I can say for certain is the likes of Kariobangi Sharks, which is your cousin football, as you did mention. And even not only just a YouTube channel, even websites. We don't have documentation. We don't have, you know, a system of archiving information. So are we in a place to enforce that, to at least you know, push for that at the moment?
We are. I mean, everybody communicates on WhatsApp these days, so that for me is the simplest way of spreading your information. So we are in that place, and it doesn't have to be, you know, even the websites and stuff like that. I mean, basic things like WhatsApp could do in terms of information and everything. That news gets around, creates a lot more awareness. So I think it's the perfect time. The question is how many are willing, first of all, to embrace it, and then secondly, to be consistent. Because also we'll see, like, you'll see some handles were last updated in 2019.
Thank you. So exactly. That's my issue.
So it shows you that they've bought into the idea.
Yeah.
But now, are you consistent about it? Yeah. Are you passionate about it? So that's what needs to happen. Now that will only happen first by telling people that not everybody can be a player. You know, but there's still a way you can contribute to the game. So if it's in terms of communication, well and good. You can share your input. You can be our club man or club woman, the person doing the communication and stuff. Somebody else can be the water boy and stuff. We are in that space. Okay. It just needs to be exploited.
On a lighter note on something you said, is it about passion or is it about necessity?
I think it's about passion because let me give you this funny example.
Yeah, sure.
There's sometimes because we are spread thin. So I'll not always be able to follow all the games on the weekend. I'm speaking from a rugby perspective.
Exactly.
So Team A is playing Team B. Team B is the favorite, Team A is the underdog. Yeah? So Team A is leading, and they lead. Then Team B starts the fight back. So the updates, because they're from Team A's page, it's up to a point where it's 15-12, 16-12, but then suddenly it's 17-16, and the updates stop.
And they're done.
Yeah, so, you know, it's last we checked, this was the score. So, you know, you have to use a fine-tooth comb to get the results. Yeah. Okay. So, and I think it's passion. But now you see you have to now rise above that passion, be objective, and just, you know, put it out. I'll give you the example sometimes, like when updating the Kenya Sevens matches, and of course there are days when it's really hard and they're on the receiving end of a heavy scoreline. You just keep going, much as you don't want to do it. I think that's where the objectivity comes out, yeah? Because you're passionate about these guys, you'd want to stop, but you have to just keep going.
That is actually true, because I've actually observed that during way back before COVID, of course, during the HSBC series. Yeah. Sometimes you see the post when you're performing well. Yeah. But sometimes not so, not so many. Yeah. Okay, now heading into the new season, and with the current environment, of course, is still fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. The COVID protocols, maybe what COVID protocols are in store? Because let's say, like in the case of football, which were revealed earlier on, late last year, we had, of course, being you know, an allocation, a designated area for, you know, players, hand wash, all that. Maybe what are some of the, you know, COVID protocols that have been, you know, set aside for the Kenya Cup 2021 season? And, well, are they affordable for most of these clubs? Okay.
Of course, away from testing, which we'll come back to, the rest of the protocols are affordable, they are realistic. So it's in terms of, number one, ensuring that there are the several stations for all the sanitizing and so on and so forth, the social distancing for the match day personnel who are going to be there, the number of substitutes allowed on the bench for each team, the number of select media people who are going to be there. Then we also have a COVID protocol officer who's been designated by each club, and this person is a medical professional. So their work is, of course, other than ensuring that the protocols are being adhered to, all the other issues related to COVID-19 in terms of its management are also being followed. It's just that I don't have them off the top of my head. But that is just part of it. So in terms of testing, there are liaisons that are happening. There's an engagement going on, especially like in Nairobi, with the Metropolitan Services, for them to do the testing for the teams. They have been kind enough to do it for the national squads, and it's coming at no cost. So you see, that's a cost that has been borne.
No cost.
Yeah, that's a cost that has been borne by them. I think the plan is for the teams outside of Nairobi to engage their county governments as well to ensure that consistent testing is also done. So also what happens is that at a place where if the costing is minimal, they shall meet it. But I know the negotiation is still there to have all those charges waived.
Okay. Yeah. And again, on a not really a lighter note, in regards to testing, and you did mention every team has a liaison, of course, for that purpose. But there is a story that emerged over the weekend, late last week over the weekend, whereby, you know, pertaining to your cousins, I'm talking about football. One of the officials, it's alleged, alleged.
Yes.
And you see, once that allegation came out, all these stories, all these theories, you know, they started being discussed on social media platforms, especially on Twitter. That's where people are the loudest, sadly enough. And it actually hit me. Would there be a possibility, or rather, are we prepared for an event whereby you have maybe a team liaison saying that, hey, like, who is in charge of the result and all that? Because can we have a situation whereby a team liaison is saying this and this and these players we saw on the test, we saw they've tested positive, but then again now, you know, the whole point is to eliminate the star players, because those were some of the theories that that were brought up pertaining to Harambee Stars when they were playing the last AFCON qualifier match not so long ago. So maybe are there any loopholes? Because I'm just thinking about it, and it's a possibility, is it not?
Yeah, loopholes will always exist, but in terms of people now looking to exploit them, I know that it would not happen on our end, because we've been in similar scenarios. This comes with concussion testing, because, you know, rugby is a high impact contact sport. So every so often, like when a player gets a head injury or a concussion, I'm sure even you've seen players being withdrawn, even against their will, because they're not, the medical personnel have deemed them unfit to play. And the beauty is that sometimes it's even a star player, and you're able to fill in that void left by the star player. So much as the loopholes exist, I don't think they will be exploited.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, maybe let's have a look at some of the fixtures, of course. The qualifiers, the Kenya Cup qualifiers, of course, the teams that will be, you know, aiming to earn qualification to the 2021 Kenya Cup season. In the first qualifier match on February the 6th, which will be on Saturday next month, you have Mean Machine taking on Egerton Wasps. And then in the second match, you have USAU versus Northern Suburbs. I just want a brief analysis from you. Mean Machine versus Egerton Wasps. I mean, Mean Machine have all the experience, but then nowadays you never know, especially in the championship.
That championship has been something else. You see, the teams who are playing in the qualifiers are the teams who finished in between positions 3 and 6.
Exactly.
So it was quite tight, although Machine put some daylight between them and the rest of the teams. So I foresee a scenario where Machine will be able at least to make it to the final round of the qualifiers. The other match between Northern Suburbs and USIU, it is quite it's quite finely balanced, because USIU, since last year, they've lost quite a number of star players who graduated, the players who literally pushed them there.
The issue we were talking about earlier on.
Yes, and now you see, you know, blooding in new players is quite the challenge. For Northern Suburbs, like I said, you never know with this team. It's young, hungry players. They are more like a subsidiary of KCB, so a lot of their players also shadow a lot of the whatever players, KCB players. But I do think it's a wide open match, and barring anything unfortunate, I can't tell who will now meet either Strathmore or Most in the matches to determine who climbs up to the top league.
Actually, pity we will meet with Strathmore Leos, because with their performance last season, it's obvious they're determined to get back to, of course, the Kenya Cup. The other Masinde Muliro, also a team that performed quite well last season, which was I can't really say surprising, because it was a build-up to that even in the previous seasons. You could see the potential, you could see how they were playing as a unit and all that.
And maybe just to add, remember we're talking about incentivizing the players. Masinde Muliro is doing that. They've managed to tap players from high schools and even from the neighboring clubs, Western Bulls and Cabras, offer them scholarships, you know, because you live in Kakamega, you study here, so literally come play and study as well. And they're utilizing it, and should they remain like that, they should be a problematic team in years to come.
Of course. So for the viewers, the winner between Mean Machine versus Egerton Wasps is set to take on Strathmore Leos a week later, after that is the 13th of February. And the winner between USAU versus Northern Suburbs will be taking on Masinde Muliro University. Quite interesting fixtures. And now getting into the, let's say, the curtain raiser for the Kenya Cup season. We have the Charity Cup, obviously. I think this is the biggest game in Kenyan rugby for the last 5-6 years.
Yes.
KCB versus Kabras Sugar.
Yeah.
Last season, we actually thought that Kabras would finally get a chance to, upset KCB. But what is it with KCB besides, as you mentioned, some of these institutions are giving incentives to players. But what is it about this KCB side that has made it so dominant for the last 6 years, to say the least?
I'd even say more than 6 years, because having played for them, I think it's a culture. Since 2002, KCB have never been out of the Kenya Cup top 4. Yeah, and you realize there's a culture of winning. So there's a lot of things that happen. There's that transition. So you'll always have the few older players who have been there, they've seen it all, imparting that knowledge as well. And this was even way before the bank started giving a lot more support. So you find that culture of winning is there. There are people who literally know how to get themselves out of a tight spot. And that is what I was also saying, if our universities could adopt that, because I'm thinking by the time someone is in 4th year, they've literally seen it all at the highest level, you're able to impart the knowledge. But that's what works for KCB. And of course, now with investment coming in, they had to give in good performances. The investment has come in. They've been able to solidify their base as well. So they have a strong squad whereby there's about 35 players who are all literally, like for like. Yeah, so you remove one and literally you're just replacing them with the next. So there isn't really much of a dip. And then the variance in ages, there's the older players, the likes of Andrew Amondi, who will soon be 40 in another 3 years, pushing ball. He's pushed ball for the longest time. But, it just shows you all these little things that are within the club culture. And that is why they consistently perform as they do.
But then again, they're coming, the Charity Cup, they're coming up against Kabras Sugar, a team that, well, once again, in the recent past, they've been losing to KCB, but they're the only team that you can say for sure are actually giving KCB, a run for their money.
Yes.
So maybe, do you think this will be their season finally? Do you think the Charity Cup will, influence, the momentum going forward into the Kenya Cup season? Especially because, now the season will be back-to-back. A lot of matches, you don't have a lot of time. So maybe, do you think it will have any impact on the momentum of either team going into the season?
I really don't think so, because I know both sets of coaches for KCB and Kabras, very wily characters, and it's very likely they could field their younger, inexperienced players because of it being a league curtain raiser and obviously keeping their cards close to their chest. And just maybe to add about Kabras, they are the epitome of investment, literally, pumping in funds and resources and saying we're going after the big prize. And that is exactly what is happening. But it's because, again, they have corporate backing, which is also working for them. Yeah, so it's interesting. If it's their season, it could be their season. It could be their season. I rate them more because the KCB team is aging. Let's accept that. A lot of players in their late 20s, on the wrong side of 30 as well. I think for Kabras, just the fact that they literally operate in the same environment. They're all in Kakamega, literally almost living and eating and sleeping together. I think they're the epitome of a professional team, and should they get things right, they will sweep all opposition.
So soon they're actually going to be the team to beat.
Yes.
According to your,
yes.
let's say, prediction.
Yeah.
Okay, and on the 27th of February, that's when you'll have the first round of matches for the 2021 Kenya Cup season. Kabras, of course, and KCB, the winners of the qualifiers, we are yet to know who that will be. But in the other matches, you have Homeboys versus Nondescript. How do you suppose that match will, of course, turn out? Homeboys, of course, has been performing quite, let's say, relatively well. It's one of those teams that you'll watch it, you'll be, it's performing well. But then again, a slump of like 2-3 matches. How do you foresee that match going?
That match could go anyway because Homeboys have also lost a number of dependable players. They lost, I think, the last count, it was Philip Ikambili, Joshua Chisanga, Emmanuel Mavala, who have made the move to Queens, and those are very pivotal players for Homeboys. But having said that, they're playing against Andondi's team, who have been recruiting young players and have been quite problematic as well in the past few seasons. And based on how the team wakes up on the day, it's anybody's game. That one I can't give it yet, because also with it being the first game of the season, anything can happen. A few seasons ago, Nondis defeated KCB. I think on the first match.
On the first match day.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, anything can happen in that game.
Okay.
Yes.
In the other match, we have Impala taking on Queens.
The Ngong Road Derby.
The Ngong Road Derby. That is a big match.
Yeah.
One of the biggest derbies, really, here in Kenya, in Kenyan rugby, where mostly it's centered around where most people say that natukazia rugby, wamesema ni yao, like Ngong Road. It's how do you say that? I don't know. I think Queens will have the upper hand in that match. I might be wrong. Maybe your assessment of that.
I agree with you, and it's a bit hard to agree with you, especially also having played my formative club rugby at Impala.
Exactly.
Yeah. Queens would have the upper hand in this particular game. They've recruited well. The big question is, do their recruits gel in well against Impala? Impala have been a bit low-key, but I think Queens have the upper hand on that game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mwamba versus Black Blood.
Okay.
And just to warn you, be very fair with your assessment of that. I'm a Mwamba fan.
It's okay. You know, I'm laughing because there was a time Black Blood defeated KCB. In fact, I think my squad is the only KCB squad that lost a Kenya Cup game to Black Blood. It was so painful because we were leading 19-10, then we ended 30-26. And we got a lot of stick from management. We were in training at 10 o'clock the next day on Sunday. So when I hear Black Blood in the first game of the season, hey, you don't want to face those.
It's really tricky.
Yeah, but I should count on Mwamba to pull it off. They'll always find a way against Black Blood, but it'll be end-to-end stuff, because Black Blood this past season, before it was cancelled, they pulled off quite a number of upsets. They stunned Impala. They came close to beating KCB. Yeah, so obviously the break would probably have done people some harm, but if I'm judging by their past form, it'll be an entertaining game.
Yeah. And Mwamba, of course, is it a different home ground this season? Of course. Maybe, I don't know if that will play a part in motivating them. I don't know.
Not really. There's been seasons when they've played literally the whole season away from home because of the state of the ground. It's a bit painful that the Relay Club is no longer in existence as a sports venue.
Sadly.
Yeah, and they'd put in some resources to ensure it was up to playing standards. So I think wherever that game will be played, it doesn't matter. It's the result. It's the result that will matter.
The results are not pegged on the ground.
Mwamba's experience should prevail.
Okay.
Yes.
And in the other match, Menengai Oilers versus Nakuru.
The Nakuru Derby.
Yeah, what happened to Nakuru was, there was a time Nakuru was actually, it was the Cabras of that time. The team that you expected in a few years would be, the biggest team in Kenya. But then again, died out. Yeah, it died out. They have a very good development program, I must say. So they've literally nurtured their players. They've not been one to purchase players. And when they do get players from other clubs, it's players who, because of studies or job transfers, end up working in Nakuru. Having said that, I think after that loss of the core players, was that core team, by the time it was winning the Kenya Cup in 2013, they had been together for about 5 years. Players who came in right from high school and then they peaked. So there really hasn't been a similar development. And then also some key personnel have also left the club. Gibson Weru, he's now coaching the rivals, Menengai Oilers, and he's adopted the same strategy of recruiting young players. And we saw Oilers had actually qualified for the playoffs before the season was cancelled at Nakuru's expense. Yeah. And that game, give it to the Oilers. To the Oilers?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just briefly, what has been happening? Because is it that rugby has been developing so rapidly that we no longer have the likes of, let's say, for lack of a better term, the deep state clubs, of course, the nondescript, the Impala, Queens, Mwamba, that nowadays they're always blowing hot and cold, to say the least. Okay, can that be credited to the standards, the growing standards of rugby development in the country, or?
I'd look at it more as a money issue, because much as it's painful to say, the teams that are dominating the league, the teams that have dominated the league since 2016, it's been KCB and Cabras, first and second. I mean, between 2017 and 2019, all those Kenya Cup finals were contested by. It was the same two teams.
We could tell.
So, yeah. So there's a gulf in terms of resources, and with the resources, they are able to attract the best talent, both on the coaching side and on the playing side. The game continues to develop, which is a good thing. But now, unfortunately, you're losing your best talent to these other sides. Yeah. So if the investments are able to trickle down now to these other clubs, well and good.
Okay, we are actually at a difficult time, as we all know, at the moment. And even as it is, these teams cannot rely on, these teams as well as the federation, they can't rely on, let's say, the gate fees and all that. Maybe, what choices at the moment do we have when it comes? It's a question I asked earlier on, and you didn't want to get into it a lot, but without the gate fees, which is at least what most of them use for at least logistics and whatnot, how will we be able to keep these teams afloat? Because as we all know, in Kenya, not so many corporates or companies are interested in investing in sports. So maybe are we foreseeing a situation whereby some clubs might actually, God forbid, of course.
I get you, and worst case scenario, it's bound to happen, because we don't know how long this current situation will prevail. Clubs for the longest time have been run off the pockets of the generals, but we can't keep doing that nearly 50 years into the Kenya Cup. We can't keep doing that. So the ideal way to go about it, like I said, would be to treat our clubs like commercial entities, business, money, income, with the income generating sources away from gate fees, such that when it comes to match day, that's just something to supplement. I've seen examples from around the world which work even with community clubs. There's a lot more things they're doing which are sustaining them going forward. But the question is the environment here suitable? Do we have the willingness to embrace that, or do we continue just doing things as we've always done? So those, like I said, tough choices, and then worst case scenario, there'll be people who will fall off, unfortunately.
It's actually quite sad.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Anyway, now another question still on investments, really. Football and rugby, they're not so different. As you mentioned, they're cousins. And we have an ever-growing fan base of rugby here in Kenya. Sometimes people fall off, but they're always new, new supporters of rugby in Kenya. And just to set out, or rather to differentiate the two when it comes to investment or even sponsorship and whatnot, why is it, according to you, being a former player, being an analyst, being part of the rugby fraternity in Kenya, what sets them apart such that you have maybe the only potential sponsors or partners, which in recent football, in recent history in Kenya, we all know it has been, unfortunately or fortunately, depends on whatever perspective you're looking at it from, betting farms. Gaming farms, rather. Here they don't like being called betting farms. Gaming farms, really. Why is it that they deem football more attractive than rugby?
Football is the most popular sport in the country.
True.
It is played literally everywhere. So when you're just looking in terms of brand visibility and penetration, it's a no-brainer.
And why is it rugby played everywhere?
Remember, rugby was an elite sport. It's taken quite a while for the teams outside of that elite circle, both in schools and clubs, to come through, right? And even by the time Njoro was winning the first national schools championships in 1992, the St. Mary's of this world, the Lenana schools of this world were still very decent teams. They were still churning out good players, which they did for another decade and a half or so. Yeah, and still at club level, everybody who was influential, both at club and at union level, were alumni of these institutions. So you'll find the circles were closed. Then also just before the introduction of the game, the first 15s was there for the longest time. But the game was really not being picked up. So that is part of the reason why rugby has not been played everywhere.
So it's the main hindrance really to developing rugby? Or
what is the main
the fact that you mentioned, you know, the fact that it's yet to fully, like, you know, move away from the whole...
Yeah, it's still perceived as elite. Even right now, when we have teams like St. Peter's Mumias, no offense to alumni of that school, I also studied in Kakamega, but the whole point is that when we have schools like that dominating national rugby, I think for me it is a testament of how far the game has grown. But like I told you, there's still the whole elitist mentality towards it, and that is why it's still not played in many places. I know even there are some institutions who have banned it because they say it's giving you a bad influence and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's just the difference.
And how do we change the perspective? Because if the latest you know, perspective remains.
Yeah.
We all know of another sport that had the same issue.
Yeah.
We all know where cricket is at the moment.
Yes.
So maybe what are we doing to maybe change that perspective?
I think there's a lot more stability now within the political scene at the rugby union. So that is key in how you people are being perceived. But also at school level, the game continues to grow. More teams, more schools are embracing it. But that's at secondary school level. I think, in my opinion, I feel that if you want this game to go further, take it to primary schools. Because what will happen...
Primary schools?
Yes. Start them young. They'll not necessarily go into contact. Give them the touch rugby, let them play whatever.
Basics,
just
really.
The basics.
The passing.
The passing, the all. You could play a mock game where there's no scrum downs and everything. But the whole point is introduce them to the game much earlier. These are things I've seen when I travel around the world. We've got competitions that are age grade from 6 to 8, 8 to 10. So, you know, you're graduating the players through that. Now, what would happen, especially in our public primary schools, is there's an alternative now to football. And I'm thinking this is something the kids would be able to play.
It's the closest alternative. That's
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is something the kids will be able to play. And now, to answer your question, maybe in another several years to come, it will equally be competing for space in public facilities with football.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's we can get into that, but it's a long conversation, really. Yeah. But now we've talked about the Kenya Cup. Now maybe let's talk a bit about the national teams. Of course, starting with Shujaa back in training. Of course, raising their fitness levels ahead of the. Of course, the HSBC legs
they were cancelled.
Some pushed way back to end of this year, 2021. But then again, maybe what can we be doing at the moment, or rather the union and the stakeholders, the fraternity, really, of course, to keep them active and all.
I think we're in a catch-22 because number one, with things like quarantine and so on, just basically the whole mess that has come as the whole disruption that has come as a result of COVID-19 left us clueless for the longest time. So a lot of last year was really, literally just sitting back. But what is happening now is that, for example, World Rugby are organizing a series of high-performance tournaments, which will be in Madrid in over the last 2 weeks of February. The Shujaa men's team is going to participate, as well as the Lionesses as well. Remember, this is an Olympic year. There has to be some form of activity or competition before these players go into the Olympics. Because, I mean, also, you just can't keep training and then going into the Olympics. I mean, these are the kind of things. So World Rugby has taken cognizance of that fact and is actually working to assist, at this point in time, the teams who qualified for the Olympics to keep busy both in terms of training and competitive action. So I believe that should be the first in a series of events towards the Olympic Games. Then after the Olympic Games, we saw last week Dubai Sevens announce their dates for their tournament, 2nd to 4th of December. Hong Kong Sevens is taking place in November. I'm sure that as we work back, the rest of the tournaments, the likes of England and the United States, will probably, in my assessment, take place around September, because I'm looking at the Olympics taking place in July, August.
Of course.
So give the players some time to rest as well. So those are some of the things that are happening.
Okay, let me tell you my main concern.
Yeah.
Because let's say for such tournaments, the one you've said is being organized, maybe, you have to look at, is it really competitive, or are they taking it as, you know, just, let's say, friendlies or preparations? Because once you get into the, let's say, the Olympics, at the moment, in the UK, the leagues are ongoing. That is rugby. Around Europe, same case. Because I'm trying to at least check and, you know, I don't want to get too hopeful. I don't want to be too hopeful, but I'm trying to evaluate our chances. So maybe, what do you think?
Our chances are as open. I'm always an optimist. Our chances are as open as they were when we won Singapore in 2016. Because, you know, you go in there, it could be a day. And you see, again, that's the beauty of rugby sevens in particular, unlike 15s. Sevens, you know, you just sneak in and finally you're competing. Because remember in Singapore, we didn't even get out of the pool comfortably. We drew one game, lost one game, won one game. Then there was a semi-final versus Argentina where it was a drop goal penalty that won. Then suddenly you hammer Fiji in the final. I don't know how far off from the pitch. Yeah, so I think it's a mindset. But physically, the boys are getting there. The girls as well. They've been in training for quite a while since November last year. Yeah, so the first phase was physicality and so on and so forth, just getting them fit. So once in a while they do have a lot of sessions around the game as well. So there's that. But to answer you, the chances, everybody has an open chance. Yes.
You never know.
You never know. Japan finished 4th at the 2016 Sevens.
That is to World Cup.
Yeah. So,
but they invested. Japan is actually investing in rugby.
They are.
Who would have known that you can actually see muscle that? I know it's. I don't want to offend anyone. Anyways, but you mentioned about the Lionesses, and the Lionesses have been coming up the last few years. They've been quite impressive. And can you say that is actually encouraging the uptake of rugby amongst women in Kenya? Because that was not something that was, you know, something you just see any day.
Actually, it is, because first of all, they like to be associated with success. So in Africa and showing the potential on the world scene, it is something very encouraging, and it has also been encouraging a lot more girls to take up the game. Thankfully, there have also been age grade programs that have been run by the Kenya Rugby Union, and what you realize is that a lot of the girls who are coming through have taken part in the age grade programs, first of all, and the age grade competitions. So you can actually track them and you can actually see their progress. The biggest example of this is Nakuru's Grace Okulu. She's literally come through the development programs, and then now she's a regular for the Lionesses, both in 7s and 15s. So the uptake is good. World Rugby even recognizes that, and they sent Peter Harding. He's a high-performance consultant. Of course, he's here primarily to help the Lionesses, just in terms of getting them ready, both for the Olympics and the World Cup qualifier in the 15s version of the game against Colombia. But also to help Kenya Rugby Union have a high-performance program that they can dig into going forward. So the girls game, the Lionesses, are very pivotal in attracting more girls to play the game in the country.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Kwambo, last question, if you don't mind. Of course, as we wind up. Last question about maybe bringing in consultants from other countries, of course, people who are more experienced in you know, rugby management, all that, be it risk assessment, talent development. We've seen a situation whereby, I'm sorry I keep comparing it to football, because it's just because I believe the two are very, you know, very close, very similar in so many ways. But we've seen a situation whereby you have even let's say, well-decorated coaches, of course, and even referees coming here to maybe partake in some courses for coaches, for referees, and is that a normal occurrence in rugby?
It is, and even if you notice is that a lot more of our coaching personnel right now is many former players, and the World Rugby syllabus is standard. So you go through level 1, which is the introduction. Level 2 is where many of our coaches are. You do an attachment and so on and so forth. Then level 3, which is where the likes of Paulo Dera are. Then we have trainer and educator. So we are always building that capacity. But to build that capacity, we will obviously time and again have help from outside the country coming in. But the beauty of it is that we are building our base here, and someone like Paulo Dera is now a trainer as well, in addition to being a World Rugby Level 3 accredited coach, which means he can also conduct those coaches. So it's a good thing in that it's a knowledge transfer, and this knowledge transfer is helping us also grow the game in the country and in our neighboring country of Uganda, which has really benefited a lot from Kenya Rugby.
Okay.
Yes.
I do think, of course, that is the biggest the most beautiful difference between football and rugby, whereby our top teams don't have to hire foreigners, of course, to come and take a game to the next level. Thank you very much, Kwambo. But maybe just as a parting shot, really, to rugby fans, of course, as much as they cannot go to the pitch to, of course, watch the game, as much as we can't tell them where to go watch the game, really, for obvious reasons. Maybe just a parting shot ahead of the new season.
Well, I think to the rugby fans, it's been a long wait for everybody, for even us who run the game. But the most important thing, rugby will return. It will be gradual, but we hope to see you guys in the stadium one day, and we hope it will be one day in 2021. Yeah.
Okay, and just as I know I keep saying the last question, this is more of an inquiry, really, because we've had a lot of people on our social media platforms, of course, even tweeting me directly, really, asking about merchandise, which is rugby merchandise, which is, of course, is a way for for our teams to earn more income for the beat KRU because of the national team and whatnot. But where can you acquire these jerseys?
Well, currently the Kenya Rugby Union jerseys are available at the Kenya Rugby Union office, RFUA ground. Yeah, you can get them then. We have something for everyone, all sizes, big and small, male and female, boy and girl. So that's where you can get them. And obviously, we're looking to introduce more. Yeah. And
of course, most people, are they affordable? That's that's the next question. Very important.
Affordable is relative. So we could tell you the price, and if you feel you can get it, well and good.
I actually don't think there's any harm in you telling them at the moment.
Yeah, well, the jerseys are going for 2.5.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, but like I said, it's relative because of the current situation we're in.
Yeah, understandably so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Kwambo. Of course, that was quite a good conversation. We hope to have you back once the league kicks off. That is like a couple of weeks, really. Less than 2 weeks?
Not a problem, I'll be here.
Less than 2 weeks.
I've invited myself.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For the viewers, that brings us to the end of our first segment. And thank you for those who have been sending us their feedback via social media platforms. You can continue to do so at KBC Channel 1 on Facebook, Twitter's at KBC Channel 1 on Twitter, and at Munga_Mbatia. And you can also, for other news, you can also log on to our website, www.kbc.co.ke. Our sign language interpreter has been Lensa Odengo, and hopefully she will join us also in the next hour. See you shortly.